In a silent office towering above New York's chaos, a trembling woman stares at a golden envelope. Inside lies not just a contract but a condition so shocking it could destroy her dreams, her freedom, and everything she believes in. Has exactly 10 minutes to decide. Surrender her future for the life of her little brother, or walk away from a billionaire known around the world as the Wolf of Wall Street. Rain struck the tall windows of the Virelli Tower like tiny fists, echoing the chaos inside Serena Hale's heart. She sat alone at the end of a massive mahogany table, her fingers tracing the edges of the envelope that had been handed to her tiny apartment just 2 hours ago. The room around her, sleek, modern, intimidating, felt like it belonged in a thriller film. She did not. Serena, with her faded jeans, worn sneakers, and tired brown eyes, was completely out of place. But her little brother needed the surgery by next week, and this insane offer was the only way. She hadn't eaten all day, and her hands shook as she opened the envelope again. At the top of the document was the name that made her chest tighten: Mr. Vincent Malkovich. He was more myth than man. The media called him the Wolf of Wall Street reborn, a billionaire with rumored ties to underground deals, ruthless takeovers, and shadowy disappearances. He was untouchable, unreadable, and feared from Manhattan to Monaco. And now, somehow her life had landed in front of his. She read the clause again. In exchange for full medical funding for the patient listed Liam Hale, Ms. Serena Hale agrees to conceive and bear a biological child for Mr. Vincent Malkovich within 12 months of the agreement, with the understanding that all parental rights remain shared. It felt unreal, unthinkable. But Liam's life was not theoretical. His heart was failing, and the waiting list was endless. Tears burned Serena's eyes, but she blinked them away. She had survived too much to cry now. Ms. Hale, a soft voice asked from the doorway. A tall woman in a grey pantsuit stepped into the room, carrying a tablet. Her voice was warm, but her expression was professional, distant. You have approximately 8 minutes to sign. Mr. Malkovich is a punctual man. Serena stood slowly. Why me? She whispered that the assistant didn't blink. Because he saw you once. At a street art show in Brooklyn. He yelled at a man for kicking over a child's art piece. Vincent was there. He said you had something he needs. Serena's breath hitched. You mean a womb? The assistant almost smiled. A heart. Serena's hands clenched. Does he even believe in love? Mr. Malkovich doesn't believe in anything, except outcomes. It wasn't always like this for Serena. 3 years ago, she was a scholarship student at NYU, top of her class in architecture, designing models of orphanages for underprivileged children. Then the car accident happened. Her parents died instantly. She dropped out to care for Liam. At only 17, he became her world. But his rare heart condition had spiraled, and every attempt at charity or funding had failed. She had applied everywhere, begged, pleaded. Now, the only man who could help was the most feared millionaire in America, and he wanted a child. The elevator doors slid open. Serena stepped out and gasped. Vincent Malkovich stood by the window, back turned, hands in his pockets. The city stretched behind him, silver buildings, yellow taxis, smoke from food carts below. He looked like a god standing above the mortals. He turned slowly, his eyes locked onto hers, sharp, grey, cold. You came. Serena's voice caught in her throat. She forced it out. For Liam. He tilted his head. Not for me. She raised her chin. I don't even know you. He walked toward her, measured, precise. That's what makes this honest. What kind of man does this? Gasped, trembling. The kind of man who doesn't trust love, he said, brushing past her. The kind who builds empires instead of families. And now, the board demands I produce an RO, lose everything I've built. So I single quotes a requirement. He looked her in the eyes, unflinching. No, you're a choice. I saw something in you that night, bravery, fire. You're not like the women I know. Serena's heart thundered. And what if I say no? He paused, then walked to a drawer, pulling out a photo. Liam, smiling weakly in his hospital bed. Wired the money already. Surgeries scheduled. The contract is your key to keep him alive. Her eyes filled with tears. She hated him, and yet, she was grateful. He saw her confusion and added softly, I don't want a robot to carry my child. I want someone real. I want something that might surprise me. She narrowed her eyes. So this is your idea of romance? He smirked. No, this is my idea of control. but you might change that. That night, Serena didn't sleep. She walked through Central Park under the orange glow of streetlights, Liam's laugh echoing in her memories. She remembered how he once said, "You're the strongest person I know, Rena, even stronger than superheroes." What if this made her a hero? What if she could save him, and something inside this heartless man too? The next morning, the papers were signed. And Serena Hale became the future mother of a child that would be born not out of love, but of necessity. But neither of them knew that life doesn't follow contracts. Entars don't listen to logic. The rain had stopped, but the storm inside Serena was just beginning. She stood alone in the grand marble lobby of Malkovich Holdings, her fingertips still stained with ink from the contract she'd signed just 12 hours ago. The weight of her decision pressed against her like a boulder tied to her chest. People in elegant suits brushed past her without a glance, but she felt like the entire world had changed, while theirs remained the same. Everything she knew about love, family, and motherhood had been rewritten. She didn't just agree to carry a child, she agreed to carry his child. Vincent Malkovich, a man whose name opened doors and closed hearts. A black car waited at the curb, its window already rolled down. "Miss Hale," said a driver in a sharp navy uniform, "Mr. Malkovich requests your presence at his estate." Immediately, her feet hesitated. Not out of fear, but because it all still felt like a dream she hadn't woken from. She wasn't ready for the world that belonged to him, a world of power, protocol, and purpose, where emotions were liabilities and silence meant control. But Liam was already in surgery, because of him, because of this deal. She got in the car. The ride was silent. Except for the distant echo of a jazz station the driver kept low. The buildings blurred into suburbs, and the suburbs dissolved into trees. Eventually, a massive wrought iron gate swung open to reveal a private estate carved into the mountainside. His world, his rules. As the car climbed the winding path, Serena's mind churned with questions she hadn't dared to ask in that conference room. Would he expect her to live here? Would they pretend to be in love for appearances? What about her art, her independence, her voice? Could a man who built empires out of steel and silence even understand a woman like her? The mansion loomed ahead, more fortress than home. Ivy crawled up its stone walls like veins, and the towering doors opened before she even stepped out. He was waiting. Vincent stood by the fireplace, sipping tea in a black cashmere sweater, casual but no less intimidating. He didn't look at her when she entered, just spoke. "You signed." "I did." "Then your life as you knew it is over." She walked closer, the soft soles of her shoes tapping against the marble. "I didn't come here to disappear, Vincent." Finally, he looked up. Something in his eyes flickered, not warmth, not quite, but something curious, alive. "No," he said slowly, "you came here to give life, and I came here to understand what it means to have one." They stared at each other across the room, to strangers bound by a decision. Neither fully understood. Then he did something unexpected. He handed her a canvas, blank, fresh, waiting. "You're an artist," he said. "Show me what it means to begin." Serena blinked. "You want me to paint?" "No," he replied. "I want you to be real. I need to see what you see." She hesitated, then took the brush. As colors spilled across the canvas, Vincent Malkovich, the man feared by nations, stood silently behind her, watching a woman transform blank space into beauty. And for the first time in years, he didn't feel in control. He felt something else, something dangerous, something human. As the sun dipped behind the hills and shadows stretched long across the floor, Vincent spoke against her softly. She barely heard it. "I never wanted to be a father." Serena paused mid-stroke. "But now that you're here," he said, "I want to understand why. It doesn't terrify me anymore." She didn't answer, because deep down, she didn't know if it terrified her either, or if, somehow, this was the start of something greater than either of them imagined. And outside, in the still evening air, the world held its breath, because even the coldest heart can change when touched by the right soul. She woke to the scent of pine and linen. The guest room was impossibly large, with vaulted ceilings and long curtains that danced in the morning breeze. A note lay on the nightstand beside a breakfast tray, berries, honeyed toast, and herbal tea arranged like art. In Vincent's precise handwriting, it read, "We begin today. Wear something comfortable." Serena stared at the note longer than necessary, unsure whether to feel honored, or observed. They hadn't spoken much after her painting the night before. He had stood behind her, watching every brushstroke, with a quiet reverence that didn't match the image the world painted of him. She hadn't expected that, not from the Wolf of Wall Street, and certainly not from the man who'd once said he didn't believe in love, only in legacy. But something had changed in his eyes while she painted. Not tenderness, not yet, but maybe curiosity. She stepped outside, into the cool mountain air, her sneakers crunching on gravel as she followed the winding path toward the back garden. There, beyond a line of sculpted hedges and stone fountains, stood Vincent, Malcovich. Not in a suit, not in armor. Just a plain white shirt and dark jeans, his sleeves rolled, his hair a bit tousled by the wind. He didn't look like a millionaire. He looked like a man trying to remember what it meant to breathe. "You're late," he said, without turning. You didn't give a time. He glanced over his shoulder, something close to a smirk at the edge of his mouth. "You're learning." "Learning what?" "To meet me in the middle." They walked in silence for a while, the gravel path winding through trees. Then, unexpectedly, he turned off the trail and led her to a small, hidden cabin. Inside, wood, books, sketches pinned to the walls, drafts of homes, schools, orphanages, blueprints, unfinished dreams. Serena stepped in cautiously. "What is this?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he walked to a desk and picked up a framed photo, one of a young boy, around 10, sitting on a bench beside an older woman with fierce eyes and a softer smile. "My grandmother," he said, "and me. She built this place. Said it was the only spot I was allowed to imagine instead of conquer." Serena looked around again. "You designed all this?" "Before I was Vincent Malcovich, the monster. I was just a kid who liked to draw houses." She didn't know what to say. No one had ever told her this about him, not the tabloids, not the corporate profiles. This wasn't part of the image. "You were different once," she said softly. "No," he replied, putting the photo down. "I was never allowed to be different. There's a difference." The words lingered in the room like smoke. Serena took a step closer. "Why did you really choose me, Vincent? Don't give me the answer you give your lawyers." He turned, and for the first time, he didn't look like the man who held all the power. He looked scared. "I've built my entire life to be untouchable," he said, "to never need anyone. Then the board told me I had 1 year to produce an heir or lose everything. I laughed. I thought I could hire someone, make it cold, easy." He looked at her now, eyes narrowed. "But then I saw you yell at a man for laughing at a child's drawing. You didn't care who was watching. You were fierce, real, honest. I didn't want cold anymore. I wanted something I couldn't predict." Serena's voice was barely a whisper. "And what if I break your rules?" He stepped forward, just close enough for her to feel the electricity in the air between them. "Then maybe I'll finally learn what it means to live by someone else's." Neither of them moved. The silence stretched until the wind rustled the blueprints on the wall, like the past trying to speak. Then, from outside, a phone rang, one long, urgent buzz. It was Serena's. She ran out, heart pounding. "Hello, IE, nursesvoice.com, but tense. Double quotes Ms. Hey, Liam's surgery was successful. He's stable now." She dropped to her knees, clutching the phone like a lifeline. Tears flooded her cheeks. Her little brother, her world was safe. "He's going to live," she whispered. Behind her, Vincent stood at the cabin's door, watching her crumble in relief. And something cracked in him, not because she cried, but because she hadn't even asked for a moment of comfort. She held it all together, alone, like he had, all his life. Only now, he didn't want her to be alone anymore. That night, Serena found another note outside her door. "Thank you for choosing to save him. Maybe, in time, you'll save me too. V." And in the quiet darkness of that cold estate, something began to thaw, something that no contract could demand. Asterisk. She hadn't expected the silence to feel this heavy. 2 weeks had passed since Liam's surgery, and though her heart was lighter with relief, Serena found herself walking the halls of Vincent's estate like a ghost inside a dream she never asked for. The walls, though beautiful, echoed too loudly. The rooms were too quiet. And Vincent, he had vanished into his business meetings and board calls, as if nothing had changed. But everything had. Every night she stared at the note he left, rereading those final words over and over again. "Maybe, in time, you'll save me too." She didn't know what he meant. She didn't know if he meant it at all. That morning, the housekeeper, an older woman with soft eyes, named Lena, entered Serena's room with a small wrapped box. "From him," Lena said gently. Serena hesitated before unwrapping it. Inside was a pair of old ballet slippers, carefully cleaned and preserved. Tucked beneath them was a photo, a much younger Vincent, maybe 12 years old, standing outside a dance studio with his arm around a girl with long dark braids, his sister Dot, and a note. Her name was Clara. She was the only one who ever believed I had a soul. "You remind me of her. Meet me in the music room tonight." Serena held the photo like it might break. Something inside her shifted. Slowly, painfully, but undeniably. That night, the estate glowed softly under golden lights. She followed the faint sound of piano down a marble corridor, unsure if it was real or memory playing tricks. But it was real. Vincent sat alone at the grand piano. The sleeves of his shirt rolled again, his fingers dancing slowly across the keys. The melody was sad but elegant, like a story no one had words for. He didn't notice her right away. When he finally looked up, something unspoken passed between them. "I didn't know you played," Serena said quietly. "I don't," he replied. "I remember. Clara used to force me to sit beside her for hours. She said even the most broken people need music." "What happened to her?" He didn't answer for a long moment. "Then, she died when I was 15. Car accident. I was supposed to pick her up, but I was late." Serena felt the ache in his voice, the tightness behind his calm. "I didn't speak for 3 months after," he added. "That's when my grandmother took over. Turned pain into business, emotion into silence." Serena stepped closer, not because she knew what to say it, because it felt wrong to leave him there, alone with a melody that never got to finish. She sat beside him on the bench. He didn't move away. Together they stared at the keys. "You're not as untouchable as you think," she said. His voice was barely a whisper. "No one's ever told me that and stayed. I'm still here." He turned to face her now, fully, and for the first time, he didn't wear power like armor. He looked human. "I don't know how to do this, Serena. Any of it. I know contracts, deals, control. But this," she nodded, understanding more than he realized. "I didn't grow up knowing love either, just how to survive it." Silence settled between them, not awkward, but comforting. Then his hand moved slightly on the bench, not toward hers, not quite but close, enough that her fingers could feel the warmth. "I don't want this child to grow up in cold halls and quiet rooms," he said suddenly. "I want to try." "Try what?" "To be different." Serena's breath caught. Vincent Malkovich, who had once said he'd never love, never trust, never surrender, was asking her for something even more vulnerable than a signature, a chance, not just to be a father, but to be a man someone could love. Later that night, Serena stood on the balcony outside her room, staring at the moon as it climbed over the trees. And for the first time since all this began, she didn't feel trapped. She felt chosen, not for her body, not for the contract, but maybe for her heart. She didn't know what the future would look like. The media would tear them apart if the story got out. The board might revolt. And there was still the matter of actually having a child, something they hadn't even talked about beyond ink and paperwork. But in that quiet, high place, with the wind brushing her hair and a piano still humming faintly through the walls, Serena whispered to herself, "He's trying." And in a world like his, that was nothing short of a miracle. Asterisk. It started with a headline. Vincent hadn't even stepped into the boardroom when the first message hit his phone. Then another, and another. By the time he reached his office, the story was everywhere, across financial news outlets, whispered in the corners of social media, and printed in bold across the morning's business tabloids. Billionaire Vincent Malkovich signs. Shocking air contract with unknown woman they had found out. Someone had leaked it. The contract. Serena's name, the clause about producing a child, the amount paid, and worst of all the claim that she was nothing more than a hired womb. Vincent's jaw tightened as he stared at the screen. The photos weren't recent, but they were real blurry snapshots of Serena walking out of the hospital, carrying her sketchbook, her expression exhausted but peaceful, now twisted into a scandal. He didn't wait for his assistant. He stormed into the boardroom, and every face turned silent as he entered. Some looked smug, others curious, a few concerned. "What do you want to know?" Vincent said flatly, his voice like ice. One of the older board members leaned forward, steepling his fingers. "Is it true?" Vincent met his gaze without blinking. "Yes, and you expect us to believe this wasn't?" An emotional decision. It was a logical one, a necessary one. My grandmother's will left me with one option. I took it, and I stand by it. A silence passed. Then another voice from across the table, soft and female. But is she just an arrangement, or something more? Vincent paused. Not because he didn't know the answer, but because the truth was more dangerous than the lie. Back at the estate, Serena had just finished watering the plants when Lena rushed in with the Platt newspaper in her hand. Her heart sank before she even read the words. She didn't need to. The look on Lena's face said everything. She sat on the garden bench and read every line, word by word, all the speculation, the photos, the accusations. One part hurt more than the rest. Sources suggest Ms. Hale agreed to conceive a child for a large financial sum. No confirmation of romantic involvement between the two has been made. That sentence undid her, because she hadn't taken the money for herself. She hadn't asked for fame or position. She hadn't even thought past Liam's surgery and the painting she left unfinished. But now, the world had its version of the truth, and that truth painted her as something she wasn't. Vincent didn't call. Not that hour, not the next, not until nearly midnight. She picked up after one ring. "I'm sorry," he said. "Who leaked it?" she asked, her voice sharp but steady. "I don't know yet. Do you believe what they're saying about me?" "No," he said immediately, "but the board does, and so does the press. And unless we control the narrative control." She interrupted, standing now. "You think this is about control? I'm the one being torn apart out there. I'm the one they're calling names. You get to hide behind a gate and a legacy." He was silent on the other end. Then quietly, "Come to the cabin tomorrow morning, please." She didn't say yes. She didn't say no. She just stared out into the night and wondered how her life had become a headline for strangers to debate over coffee. The next morning, she found him at the cabin. The blueprints were gone. The piano was uncovered, and on the wall behind him was her painting framed, lit softly by morning light. "You hung it," she said, voice flat. "I needed a reminder." "Of what?" "That not everything begins with power." He stepped toward her, eyes tired but honest. "They think this was about money, but I know the truth. You didn't ask for a dime. You signed that contract because your brother needed to live. And he stopped himself. "I didn't just choose you because of what I saw that day in Brooklyn," he said. "I chose you because I wanted to feel something real, and I did. I do. But now they've turned it into something ugly." Serena crossed her arms. "Then fix it." "I'm trying." "No, you're protecting yourself, your company, your name." She pointed to the painting. "That's who I am, Vincent. Not your solution, not your scandal." He looked at her then, truly looked, and for the first time, there was something breaking in his expression. A man used to standing above the world was finally realizing the world didn't owe him forgiveness. "You're right," he said softly. "I was so used to thinking in deals and damage control, I forgot what it meant to protect someone I care about." Her heart stumbled at that word, care. He took a breath. "I'll go public, on record, tell the truth, not just about the contract, but about you, about what you mean to me." She didn't speak, her arms still crossed, but something softened in her eyes. He stepped closer. "You've already saved one life, Serena. My company didn't need an heir. I did, not a child, a reason to change." The wind picked up, rustling the trees around the cabin. The sky was still gray with storm clouds, but there was something peaceful in the moment. Raw, real, and maybe for the first time since she signed that paper, Serena saw a future that wasn't written in contracts or conditions, but in choice. She turned to leave. At the door, she paused. "When you speak to the press, don't make me sound like a hero." He frowned. "Why not?" "Because I'm not. I'm just a woman who said yes when everything in me screamed no." And with that, she walked out, but she didn't walk away, because sometimes saying yes doesn't make you weak, it makes you brave. They told him not to do it. Every advisor, every lawyer, every board member warned Vincent Malkovich that stepping in front of the cameras with the truth would be a fatal mistake. That once the world saw him not as the untouchable empire builder, but as a man who broke the rules for something as messy and human as love, it would all come crashing down. But for once, Vincent didn't care. He had spent his life protecting an image. Now, he wanted to protect something real, someone real. And so, on a rain-soaked morning in Manhattan, standing behind a podium surrounded by flashing lights and dozens of reporters, He looked into the cameras and didn't blink. "Not here to defend a rumor," he said. "I'm here to confirm it." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Microphones pushed forward. Cameras zoomed in, but he didn't flinch. Double quotes, "Yes, Serena Hale signed a contract to carry my child. Yes, I offered to fund her brother's surgery. No, she never asked for a single dollar for herself. She saved her brother's life. I asked her to save mine. She didn't accept out of greed. She accepted because she's the kind of woman who still believes in doing the right thing, even when the world gives her nothing." The room buzzed, murmurs rising like thunder. But he wasn't finished. "She is not a mistake. She is not a transaction. She is the most honest person I've ever met. And whether she forgives me or not, whether she chooses to stay in my life or not, the world deserves to know that for the first time in my life, I didn't lead with power. I led with fear. Fear of being unloved. Fear of losing something real." His voice cracked just for a second, not enough for most to catch, but enough to make Serena, watching from a quiet hotel room across the city, put a hand to her mouth and feel the ache in her chest swell. He was doing it. He was telling the world what she never asked him to say, and that meant something. Everything. The press had a field day. Headlines swung from scandal to redemption. Social media buzzed with debates and hashtags. And suddenly, Serena Hale was no longer a ghost in the background of a billionaire's life. She was a symbol of courage, of choice, of something honest, in a dishonest world. But the noise didn't matter. What mattered was that the next morning, Serena knocked on the door of the estate, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. Lena opened the door, eyes wide with surprise and relief. "He's in the garden," she whispered. "He hasn't slept." Serena walked slowly through the halls, her steps familiar now. Her hand brushed the edge of the painting still hanging near the music room. The sun had returned after days of storms, warming the marble floors and the space she'd once walked through like a stranger. She found him kneeling beside a row of damaged flower beds, sleeves rolled, dirt on his hands, hair messy, eyes tired. He looked up as she approached but didn't stand. "I didn't expect you to come back," he said quietly. "I didn't expect you to speak," she replied. "But you did." He looked away, fingers playing with a broken root. "I didn't know how else to show you that this wasn't just about obligation anymore. It never should have been." "I know," he said, "but I didn't know how to be anything but what I was taught to be, until you." A long silence stretched between them. Then she knelt beside him. "I'm not perfect, Vincent," she said. "I'm scared, too. I don't know what it means to build a future with someone who once terrified me, but you came back." She nodded. "Because despite everything, I believe there's something worth saving here." He turned toward her, and for the first time, he didn't look like a man asking to be loved. He looked like a man ready to earn it. "I want to do this the right way, Serena," he said. "Not because of a contract, not because of legacy, but because I want to build something with you, something ours, a family, not one made from rules and fear, but from choice." Her eyes filled with tears, and she didn't look away. She didn't run. She reached for his hand, the one covered in soil and trembling slightly, and held it. "I won't promise I won't walk away again," she said, "but I will promise to stay as long as you keep trying to be the man I saw that first night, the one who stood in silence and watched a stranger paint something honest." He smiled. It wasn't the smile of a billionaire who'd won. It was the smile of a man who finally understood that love isn't given because of money, or power, or conditions. It's given when someone sees you all of you and still chooses to stay. 3 months later, Serena gave birth to a baby girl with her mother's eyes and her father's quiet strength. They named her Clara. Not for legacy, but for memory. Because sometimes the most dangerous men are just boys who never healed, and sometimes the bravest women aren't the ones who fight, but the ones who forgive. And in a world full of contracts and control, they built something no one could tear down, a family, born not from obligation, but from the courage to believe in something better. Real beginning, chosen, together.